Hello, everyone. Welcome to the conversation around Black Girl Magic is Wealthy. I'm Marty McDonald, the CEO and founder of Boss Women Media. I'm so excited to have these women that are part of today's conversation lean in and share with our community what building wealth looks like for Black women. And you know what? It has nothing necessarily to do with what's in your bank account, but sometimes what's in your toolkit that's going to help you propel forward of building wealth for generations to come. You guys, I have Allyson Felix with us today and Keatonart Raymond. I'm so excited for these women to lean in. Allyson, share with everyone who you are. You need no introduction though. Who you are and what you currently have going on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Allyson. I am an Olympian, a track and field Olympian. I've been competing for the last 20 years, and I am just recently stepping away from that and stepping into new roles. I am the president of my company, Seish, that I founded alongside my brother. We're a lifestyle brand for women. We create sneakers specifically designed for the form of a female foot. And so I'm really enjoying that. I also have passions around maternal health in the Black community and just advocating for women and true equality in general. So I'm really excited to join you all in conversation today.
333 snaps for all of the above that you have going on. I absolutely love it. Keatonart, share with everyone who you are and what you have going on.
I am with Capital One as a senior communications manager. But a lot of my life I've spent in public service, working for the government in the public affairs space as well. I think one of the most important things to me, both in the public service space and then now, is not only empowering and uplifting Black women, but just providing them the space to do what they do. Like, I think this summit, speaks to how powerful Black girl magic is. It's not cliche. It's not an overestimation. There is an incredible force that is a Black woman and her ability to uplift communities along with herself. And so that's something I'm really passionate about. Also very passionate about sort of the hyphenated American space. My family's originally from Haiti, and the strength of a Haitian woman is also something that has sort of pushed me in my life. And so always happy to give back to that community as well. I'm fangirling a little bit because I love Allyson, and I'm thrilled to have this conversation with y'all today.
Thank you so much. So, ladies, let's just get started. When we think about wealth and financial well-being, Allyson, for you, what does that mean, and how are you really creating the pathway for yourself through financial well-being?
Yeah, I think to me, it really is about the ability to have freedom, to have independence, to make decisions and choices for my family and for my daughter. I have a 3-year-old girl, and I just think about her future and the way that I want her to grow up, learning about this world, learning about finances. And so to me, it's just about the ability to understand what is going on, how I want to build and create, and for the future of my family and especially my daughter.
I love that. I have an 18-month-old little girl. And when I think about financial well-being for her, I mean, that's always in the forefront for myself, right? Like, how am I creating a pathway that's a little bit easier for her? What legacy am I leaving behind for her and her children to come, right? And how do we make this conversation more accessible, more attainable, and more authentic for women to lean into, especially Black women. So Keatonart, when I think about that and what that looks like, can you lean in and share a little bit around the viewpoint of financial well-being from a Capital One perspective, and what resources are available to us through that lens?
I'm very happy to. So one of the things that Capital One is very committed to is the idea of financial inclusion. That means dismantling barriers that exist that you often don't realize prevent people from either having the knowledge or the tools to be in control of their finances, right? One of the things that they did and were a leader in the industry in doing in 2021 was eliminating fees for overdrafts, right? I know, like, being a high school and college student with my first jobs, like, you swipe that card at McDonald's or something like that, and you just like, pray this goes through because this is going to cost me $32 if it don't. And so that fear, all jokes aside, and the idea that, you know, you're really trying to be in control of your finances, but there are these sort of external things that can derail you, is something that I think is critical. And so that's an example of that. And I think another example of that, a larger example of that, which ties into the summit and Capital One support, is this idea of serving in the communities in which you exist. So Capital One has branches in cafes, right? And the cafes exist in the communities not just for people that have an account with Capital One or are affiliated with them. It's really like, if you want to get control of your finances, or if you want to talk about your financial goals, come into the cafe, talk to someone. And it's done in a low pressure, low intimidation environment, which I think is key, because talking money can be stressful. And it's like, just tell us what your goals are. They don't have to be lofty. To your point, Marty, they don't have to be sort of pie in the sky and like, I want to be a millionaire. It's literally like, at the end of the year, I want to get to a place where I'm not necessarily check to check. Or at the end of the year, I want to get to a place where I've built up a nest egg because I want to buy a condo, or I want to buy a house, or I want to make sure that my kids are good. And so that's one of the things that I love about Capital One, to your question, is the idea of financial inclusion is broad. It's a broad spectrum, and we want to appeal to as many people as possible to make them feel included. And so those are some of the ways that Capital One is trying to do that.
Listen, I was that college student that had all the overdraft fees. Okay. I'm talking about never balanced anything.
It hurts.
Just thought money, I had no clue. I absolutely had no clue. So I absolutely love that as a tool. You know, when we think about building wealth, right? Like, and I'm talking about wealth from the perspective of a 360 experience around how I live my life through wealth. Allyson, can you share a little bit around what you are currently putting in place right now to make sure that there's a framework for wealth from that 360 lens that's being created for you and your family?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just listening to you say about, leaving a legacy, for your child. And I think that is so important. And when I think about, starting a business, for me, that was really scary. Growing up in my community, that was not the norm. That was not something that I saw. But, being able to step out and to have business mentors and people in my life who encouraged me and empowered me to say that I can do that, that does allow me to set up the future for my family and for my daughter, and to be able to leave her something as well. And so I think it's about, getting that confidence, being able to build that in a space where we might not necessarily have that history. Like a lot of other people, who in different communities, who that is the norm, and they get left things all the time. That wasn't my experience. And so I think I really had to get comfortable with stepping into a new space and saying that I am capable. I do have the ability, and I can build. And so taking that on was so empowering for me, and creating, my own business, and just saying that, like, not only do I want to create this for my daughter, but also at our company, I want it to be a place where young Black women designers come and grow their own careers, and say that, they can go out from here. And so I'm just really excited to, step into that space. But it wasn't easy, and it wasn't just kind of natural. It definitely took that courage, and it took people pouring into me to say that I can do this as well.
Were there specifically anything that practical tools that you put into place as you navigated this new landscape, right? Like for that woman who's listening, who might be a new mom, who wants to start this new business, right? To create this legacy, what advice would you give her? And what framework would you tell her that, hey, this is where you can start from to do that?
Yeah, I think the idea that you have to know everything and you have to be an expert in every area is not the case. I was stepping into a whole new industry, and I think we have to talk to each other. I literally reached out to someone, a woman who was an expert in the industry that I was wanting to go into, and asked for her advice, asked for, her experience and how can I do this? How can this be practical for me? And she really broke down to me that it's about team. It's about assembling, the group of people who are going to help you achieve this goal that might feel super ambitious, it might feel out of touch, but it's about those baby steps. And I think that a lot of times, as women, as Black women, we're not as open about talking about money, about our goals and what we're building. And I think that if we kind of break down some of that and become more vulnerable with each other, we can kind of unlock some of that power that we need to build these things that aren't the norm in our community, but we are absolutely capable. Like we have that Black girl magic, like we can do this. And there's no reason that we shouldn't be pushing in all the different areas.
And if I could just pull on that thread for a second, because you hit the nail on the head. So we're coming up on August 26th, which is it's Women's Equality Day. And we have a long way to go before, even women have real equity in society, but especially Black women. And Black women's payday is also coming up, which sort of notes the disparity in how much Black women are paid compared to other people. So Allyson, your point about we got to talk to each other is important, because not only do we need to demystify like talking about money and just getting a sense for like how should I be valued on the market? Like how should I be getting paid? I also want to highlight something that has been really important in my journey, which is like operating in the sense that there's abundance, that there's enough for everyone. So sometimes, being guarded with what you talk about is because you're like, well, like I got to protect my own. Like if I talk, like, that might take away from what I have. And this idea of scarcity is something that we create. It's something that exists. And it's like, there's enough room for all of us to eat. And so like wealth is also about that abundance and about like, we can all win. If we work together, we're more likely to all win than not. And so definitely wanted to just add to that. And thank you for raising that, Allyson, because it's so critical.
Yeah. I absolutely love that you mentioned that about the abundance mindset. Allyson, can you lean in and share with everybody like how and why you decided to start your own shoe company? Like what happened that allowed you to say, okay, this is the move that I have to make. And I know that if I make this move, that it's going to get me, 10 times further, right? It's not going to be easy. I'm going to build, but I'm going to leave legacy and impact in a way that I wouldn't have been able to if I have taken pathways of here, right? What happened? What was the story behind that made you do that? And then when we talk about that abundancy mindset behind it, like I know it's so hard to capture and to have all the time, but it's a constant reminder that you have to, and a muscle that you have to flex to know that you are capable.
Yeah, it really came about organically for me. I had been with Nike for almost a decade. They were my sponsor, as a track and field athlete. And I wanted to start a family, and I wasn't fully supported through that process. I ended up sharing my story. I was absolutely terrified to do so because I knew that there would be consequences because of that. But I just deeply believed that it was the right thing to do. I mean, at this point, it was 2018, 2019, and women, their contracts were being paused or you were having to hide your pregnancy to secure a new contract in track and field. And that was just absolutely crazy when you became a mother. It was almost treated like you were injured or something was wrong with you. And so I was scared because I knew I wanted to still compete. I knew I still needed a sponsor, but I had to share what was happening, behind the curtain. And so I did. And after I did that, I parted ways with the company. They eventually changed their policy around maternal protections for women. But the consequences of that was that I didn't have a sponsor. I was training for my 5th Olympic Games. And I just thought, how crazy. Here I am, I'm a runner, and I don't have shoes to run in the Olympics. And it was so wild to me. And I also was just exhausted and feeling like I wasn't valued, like I wasn't seen. I knew my worth, but I felt like other companies were not recognizing that. And so it was actually in talking with my brother about that situation, that he was like, well, why can't we do this ourselves? And I think it's also not seeing like the representation where I felt like, well, no, that's too big for us. Like, how could 2 kids from LA, like, I feel like there's nothing special about us. Like, how could we take that on? But it was really in him empowering me and saying like, no, you're capable. Like, why can't you do this? And saying that, no, we can build shoes for me to wear in the Olympics and build something for women that's even bigger and about community and all of that. So I think also just that idea of that it's an abundance. And, I think coming from the athletic world, I've always felt like there's so much competition and like there can only be one. And I think that, there is this idea of a sisterhood and we can help each other. A win for my sister is a win for myself as well. And so I really just, have been empowered in starting my own business and kind of moving forward with all of this.
And I know that at the time, you talked about like it was scary, right? Like you jumped out, you took this risk, but you stepped in the gaps between the women, but for the women who were coming behind you to now be able to, use this as a change for that organization. And they don't have to suffer from hiding, having a family or whatever that may look like. Keaton, is there an instance that you could share where you really stood in the gap for another woman to be able to have something that wasn't necessarily given to you, or share a story about when like your parents done that for you?
I would say that, working in the space that we are in now and having authenticity and like bringing your full self to the workplace, being more celebrated, is not the same workplace that I came into when I started my professional career, right? And so I think that I have been really lucky, both in the way that I was raised to bring my heritage into every room that I'm in. And then, like Allyson said, like you just have people in your life that sort of pour into you. And when they pour into you, that makes you more confident about exactly who you are at the time. And so moving into different professional spaces and saying, this is who I am, this is what I look like, this is what I bring to the table, like you take it or leave it, that has continued to open the door for other women behind me, whether I know it or not, for them to be their full selves and bring themselves to this work. And I think it's so critical, whether you're talking about the workplace or how you move through life and how you pursue your goals. There's nobody else like you, and that's your strength. And that is what, that's what fosters success. That's what builds wealth. And Allyson recognizing her path and her story and where she was exactly as that moment, like that's what facilitated the catalyst for her success. I think, again, I will never stop saying like, Black girl magic is not a cliche. It's not just a saying. It's something that is very real. And it's something that I think is amplified when we can all be ourselves and bring our full selves to whatever table we're talking about. And so that's something that I hope, in living out my truth, like I've been able to inspire others and I've been able to create a more comfortable space for Black women to do the same.
Absolutely love that. I think about when you say what Black Girl Magic is. I remember when I first decided to exit corporate America and I was going to go full throttle after, creating this media company for myself. You know, that was a time when you couldn't necessarily even say Black women to make
Mhm.
everybody feel comfortable, right?
Right.
We were using women of color, we were putting ourselves in a bucket. Even you definitely weren't going to corporation saying Black Girl Magic, right? Like, wait, or Black women are the future. Like, wait, hold on now, right? And now I think about just the rooms that I've been in, the tables I've had the opportunity to sit at, and never being afraid to showcase what Black Girl Magic is, never being afraid to even say it, right? Even before COVID, before the social awakening of George Floyd, right? Being there and just saying it so that the world could understand what they were rallying behind is another way that I think we all embody in everything that we do when we stand up in the morning, that we're showing the world what Black women can do and how they can deliver, which is something that's
Absolutely.
very admirable for both of you ladies. So, okay, last question that I have is really around the wealth gap, right? We know that, the pandemic has caused about 50% of African American businesses to close and shut down, right? But then we also know that access to opportunity has also shifted within this time frame, right? And so when we think about the wealth gap and what we need to do to alleviate it for our community, specifically as you think about Black Women Equal Pay Day that's coming up, and the gap of the cents of the 63 cents to every dollar of what a white man is making, and how we're able to really stand there and say, hey, no, this is what I'm worth, this is what I should be paid. Allyson, can you share how and what you are doing to feel the wealth gap, stand in the place of it, for our community, and ways in which you've seen yourself have to, advocate for yourself as it relates to the wealth gap?
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about education, about financial literacy. And when I think about just even, nurturing my daughter and the environment that I want her to grow up in, I want to talk about money around her. I want her to understand, finances, and even thinking in regards to Black women, that we have to be involved in our money management, and we have to take an active role of that, of understanding the process, even if you're not the one to be hands-on. And so just making sure, especially coming from the athletic world, where a lot of times you're coming into money for the first time, the first person in your family, and not understanding how to deal with that or manage it. So I always just encourage, people to take time to understand what's happening, to read, and to get involved. And I think that that's a way that we could really protect our future and protect our families, and as we build. And also encouraging business ownership, and really stepping into that space as well, and knowing that we're capable and able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Keatonard, with you guys in Capital One, what are some ways that, we as a collective can understand the opportunities that are available for us as we think about the wealth gap and how we continue to build for the Black community?
So I'm glad you asked. The partnership that Capital One has with Boss Girl Media and the Black Girl Magic Summit is a part of a larger community initiative where it is advocating for racial justice. It is helping to build up Black communities, whether we are in those communities as the branches and cafes, or we just recognize a need. And it is in empowering women. So, for example, with the summit, we're supporting the pitch competition. which is giving $100,000 grants to women who own businesses. And there are a number of initiatives that take place across the lines of business that are directed towards either Black women. Like August is it's Black Business Month, I think. And so there are a lot of conversations around, well, how do you support Black businesses? What does that look like small scale? What does that look like, on a more industry scale? Things that we don't often think about are like dynamic ways that our communities can support Black businesses. For example, Allyson has her business Sage. If you're a high school coach of an athletic team, right? And you're like, I want to make sure that all of our team members have the latest Jordans or Air Force, something like that. You can pivot and say, well, actually, we have this Black woman who owns this company. Let's try and have our high school work with them. You know what I mean? So that is what Capital One is doing in a lot of these spaces, is again mapping out, where do we need to fill in a knowledge gap? Where do we actually need to fill in a resources gap? How do we have people think differently about supporting their communities and supporting businesses? And where can we fit in? I think that it is important as a company and as a business for us to go out into the community and for us to find those opportunities. But I also want to give the context that you can seek us out too. I think that, there's a flattening and there's sort of a democratization that has happened in terms of communication now, where, you could tag somebody on Twitter and be like, yo, how can you support this? Or you can reach out to any, sort of outreach office and say, I have this opportunity I would like for you to support. I think that we have a level of agency that we should use as well in seeking out people that can support us. And so those are some of the ways that I would highlight. Both Capital One from a community perspective and from a business perspective is working to bridge those gaps.
I absolutely love this conversation as we talk about Black Girl Magic is Wealthy and the nuggets that we leave our community with around advocacy and, gaining your own resources, being in the forefront, building business together. Thank you, ladies, so much for being a part of this conversation presented by Capital One. And absolutely let everyone know, Allyson, how our community can stay connected with you and how they can support you.
Yeah, I would love for you guys to support me through Sage. And you can find me at sage.com. It's just SAYSH. And yeah, I really appreciate that and loved this conversation.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Allyson.